Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. I have a stellar panel this morning, which includes criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh and Luke Beasley, the host of the Luke Beasley Show. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. I want to get right into it. Mark, this first one is going to be directed to you because a judge overseeing the Trump hush money trial once again ruled that Trump violated his court-ordered or court-imposed gag order. And this is what he said directly, and I'm quoting him. He says, "The last thing I want to do is put you in jail. You're the former president of the United States and possibly the next president as well. But at the end of the day, I have to do my job. The magnitude of such a decision is not lost on me." Mark, what's your reaction to that?
Well, no surprise. What Trump did that found him in violation of the initial gag order with the 9 violations. It's exactly what he found here. He did violate by contacting or speaking about witnesses that he was not supposed to speak about. And it's no different than a parent who takes a kid and puts them in timeout and then the kid repeats the conduct. Well, you can't just keep putting them in timeout. Got to take that phone away. Got to make sure they don't go out on the weekends. You got to do more. And jail is something the judge is saying, listen, that's the next step. You violate and you're going to jail.
He continues, though, to whenever he leaves court, whether it's an adjournment for the day or a recess, he continues to come out and speak about the case, even attacking the judge and criticizing the process, also attacking Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. I want you to listen to what he said after the judge ruled just today that he had violated this order. Listen.
Are you going to testify? I have a gag order as to that first question. As you know, they've taken away my constitutional rights, so I'm not allowed to answer that question. This has never happened in this country before. It's a ridiculous thing. It's a ridiculous case. I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. Take a look at Greg Jarrett this morning. He went on. Take a look at Andrew McCarthy or Jonathan Turley or Mark Levin. It's like they say there's no case here. And yet the judge has gagged me, and I'm not allowed to talk about, I guess, his total conflict. The judge is totally conflicted, and you ought to take a look at it. And I'm not supposed to be talking about it, but I am allowed to say that the judge has a conflict that like nobody's ever had before. You ought to take a look at it. He's taken away my constitutional right to speak. I was in Miami this weekend, and reporters are asking me questions, the same questions like you're asking me, and I have to say I have a gag order, I can't speak about it. Never happened before, ever. Number one. Number two, it's a fake trial. They have no case. And it's been absolutely proven now. They have no case whatsoever. This is Alvin Bragg doing it for political reasons for Biden. This is a Biden trial. He's a crooked president.
Luke, what do you make of his statement?
Well, first of all, I'm not defending him. I couldn't control him if I wanted to. But those statements are constitutionally protected. Maybe not advisable, but he already knows he's lost this judge. This judge is not going to, be a fan of Trump's or give him the rulings he wants. So this is all political, what he's doing. He's making sure that his base knows that he's being gagged. And so I would defend him on his right to spew what he's spewing because it doesn't run afoul of the gag order. It doesn't attack any particular witnesses that are going to testify. It just criticizes the judge, which is his right.
I'm going to talk to you more about that, some of the statements that he said, because I think it's not true, and I think you'll agree with that. You're right. He can say what he said, and he said, he's gagging me, but I am allowed to say this. But Luke, I want to get you in. I want to know what you think of his statement, because this is in defiance of the judge, really, stepping as close to the line as he can.
Right, and even so, he's mischaracterizing what his gag order says he can and can't say, where he's acting like, at first he acted like he couldn't take the witness stand because of the gag order, which made no sense. Now he's saying he can't answer the question of if he's going to be testifying, also inaccurate. But to me, this displays this common ultimate victimhood complex that Trump has and MAGA sort of defines itself around, which is here, he's a criminal defendant, and that comes with it certain things. And he knows that. He's instructed about that. And then he'll either, like you talked about, step as close to the line as possible, or just blatantly, brazenly violate the gag order or any other element of this process. And then when he's punished, often softer than a different criminal defendant would be, he's the big victim, and it's very exciting to MAGA that he's being treated so poorly. So it seems to be getting tiring, this routine, but I guess it still works politically for him among his base.
Do you think that, Luke, do you think that he kind of wants to go to jail maybe because it would offer him some more cred with his supporters?
Yeah, a short little stint because of violations of a gag order, I think would be his dream.
Mark, you're saying no way.
All right, I have my finger on the pulse. I disagree with Luke. And again, it's an opinion. I don't know for sure. I don't have a crystal ball. I do believe that he wants every benefit of being gagged and looking like it's unfair. And that absolutely brings a lot of power to what he's arguing. But I don't think this man wants to go to jail. Jail is not fun. He's not willing to spend a second in jail. He gets all of the impact of this simply by having the judge find him in violation of the gag order, but not actually going to the pokey.
Well, I think he knows. I think he believes that the judge won't actually do it. And I think the judge is telling him in his first statement where he goes, the last thing I want to do is put you in jail. And so, and then because after 9 times, this is the 10th, I think, Mark, he could have just said, the next time is jail, right? That's what he could have said. The next time is jail.
Wait, no, I'm going to tell you why he can't say that.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all,
I'm warning you that I could just send you. He said that before.
I know, but here's the thing: a judge can't pre-rule because then he's violating his oath. He has to say, "Let's just see what happens the next time." It depends upon the violation, how egregious it is. He's just saying he may do that. And I think the judge will. I think that if Trump does it again, as blatantly as he did it before, he will send him to jail, and he doesn't want to.
I think it's interesting, Luke, how he reels off this whole rogues gallery of conservative-leaning television pundits and attorneys, so to speak, are saying there's no case, and of course these people are all in his pocket.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. At one point, he accidentally listed off Sean Hannity as a legal expert that agrees with him, which is a pretty powerful legal expert there. But it gets to the political, regardless of what happens, what's brought forward in this case, which is going to be interesting to all of us as the witnesses continue to come forward. The MAGA right-wing media world message is going to stay identical. It's a witch hunt. It's not really that serious of a case. Who really cares? And they can keep going with that. The struggle is polling shows that a conviction would be really damaging to Trump. So again, he's going to keep trying to play this down. And I don't necessarily think it'll work. And what matters is actually what the jurors take from all this different evidence being brought forward.
Yeah. I just want to go through a couple of things, Mark, if you can answer for me, and you can tell me if it's true or not. Taking away his constitutional rights. Did the judge take away his constitutional rights, Mark?
No, I don't think so. I think that the judge followed legal precedent in finding that Trump's right to free speech is outweighed by the fact that he's interfering with the judge's ability to carry out and administer justice in the court. So he has every right to do it, as controversial as it is.
It has never happened before.
That's also untrue. I mean, it's an exaggeration. We're used to it by now. It rolls off our back, but it's never happened before. No one has ever been gagged. No one's ever been held responsible and accountable when they violate the gag order. I mean, I've been practicing 32 years in spite of my extremely youthful appearance, and I've seen it happen dozens of times.
The judge is conflicted.
I don't think that he's very conflicted. I think he's very clear. Just stop saying stuff that affects potential witnesses that are going to testify in the case. You could talk about me, the judge is saying. You could criticize me. You could criticize the prosecutor. You just can't criticize witnesses who are going to testify because that does interfere with the administration of justice. He's not conflicted.
Luke, somehow he has made this, and he said in his statement there, he turned this into Joe Biden's trial. He said this is a Joe Biden trial, and Joe Biden is corrupt.
Yep. It's seemingly on its face ridiculous for a bunch of reasons. The most important one to point out is that there's not a scrap of evidence that Biden's involved himself at all in Trump's prosecutions, but also even more simpler than that, this isn't a federal case. So even though the same arguments made about federal cases, and that's inaccurate, this one gets even more ridiculous because it's not even something Biden would have purview over. But it is working. We were talking before starting today, Don, about the travels I've done to Trump rallies, and each and every one of these Trump supporters going to these rallies really does believe that Joe Biden is simultaneously sleepy and doesn't know where he is, and also is coordinating one of the greatest witch hunts to take down a political opponent in history.
Can I say something controversial, Don?
Yeah.
Don,
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Just to keep it completely fair and balanced, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with this argument, but I want to make it, right? Okay. We know if somebody murders, rapes, or molests a child, it's clear every prosecutor around the country is going to bring that type of case. This one is a little different. I've never heard of a case like this being brought. Doesn't mean that they can't bring it, but it's so unusual that it starts to border on, well, would you bring this case if it was some other politician? An argument can be made, at least we have to listen to it if we're being intellectually honest, that the prosecutor is bringing a case that wouldn't ordinarily be brought because it's really thin. The idea that this should be listed as a campaign expense versus legal fees, and that it's campaign interference versus influence. It's hard for law students to get points on an exam and get their head around this. So you start to wonder, well, why would somebody bring a case like this? The first thing you're going to do is say, well, are they Democrats or are they Republicans? And I do think it's fair to raise that issue. Only the prosecutors know why they're bringing this case, and they know in their heart whether they would bring it regardless of which side somebody, signs up to lean, left or right.
I understand your argument, but does it matter now? He's already in the courtroom. They're not going to say, "Oh, well, this is all over. I take it back." It's we're not going to do it. I mean,
you're right.
It doesn't, except for the court of public opinion.
It doesn't matter now, but there's this little thing called an election, to be the leader of the free world. So it does matter in that regard.
Yeah. So, and Luke, you were getting to it because among his supporters, which you are out there talking to MAGA folks all the time, how is this going to play? Him saying, this is my constitutional rights are being taken away. I've been gagged. It's never happened. They're going to buy all of this stuff, right? Biden is corrupt, yada, yada, yada.
Definitely. And I am terrified of the outcome of that, especially with the recent Time interview where it seemed like Trump wouldn't unequivocally say that he wouldn't want violence if he lost. And they're going to believe this time, they had all the conspiracy theories about widespread voter fraud in the last election. This time it'll be these legal cases or how they stole the election from Trump. And what that could lead to is unknown, but definitely frightening. I would say to Mark's point, I definitely am willing to have those sorts of concerns raised. I think it's perfectly fair. Most of the people raising them don't have much credibility given that they're making the same argument about all the cases. And I don't think you can make that same argument about each case. And also with the election interference part of this case, trying to sort of defraud the public through these actions, it's correct to say this case wouldn't be brought if it weren't a presidential candidate because it's directly involving that magnitude of potential fraud.
I want to take a step back now, and we have the breaking news, and I want to get to what happened on Friday, because Friday, Mark, was a bombshell witness. Hope Hicks, who was President Trump's, before he was president, his right-hand person, right? She knew everything. She went through every single controversy with him. She had some of the biggest, can you walk us through some of the biggest bombshells in her testimony?
Yeah, I thought early on in her testimony, I called it colossal. And what I mean by that is colossal meaning in favor of the defense. And then she said some things that I think hurt the defense. Right, but let's start off with colossal. As a defense lawyer, I would be arguing to this jury that his payoff of Stormy Daniels was not necessarily because of campaign interference or even influence. It's because I got a wife at home and I don't want her hearing about these false or true allegations that I slept with Stormy Daniels. That's the reason. And it hurts my brand as well. So Hope and so I was prepared to make that argument if I'm defending him. And it would be just done by just reasonable inference. But then you got Hope Hicks, who gets up there and says, I remember independently at the time him actually saying that he was concerned about how this would affect Melania. Well, boom, there's your reasonable hypothesis of innocence right there. Now, later on, she also then said he was concerned about how everything would affect the election. And that was always on his mind. So that helps the prosecutors too. But 50-50, he did it primarily because of his marriage or his brand or the election, it hurts prosecutors. They have to prove it beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt.
Yeah, but also the timeline adds up when you look at when David Pecker, sort of entered this and being in the Oval Office and talking about it, because that affair was known for years, for quite some time. And the concern over it and the payoff did not come until he was running for president. I mean, they're just the facts. What I found it interesting, if you want to respond to that, you can.
No, just that's the argument that prosecutors will make, right? But in a courtroom, when you're in that little vacuum, right, and they're sworn to look at all the nuances, as long as you make a credible argument on the defense side, and I've done it for 32 years, I've litigated these cases, as long as there's something credible on the other side, to suggest that this wasn't the only payout he's done it, for years. And the fact that it coincidentally was before an election doesn't mean that was the sole motivation and the reason why he paid her off. It's part of doing business when you're a celebrity. People have cash grabs all the time, or they want payouts for legitimate stories,
I want to talk about the human part of this, Luke, because you had Hope Hicks on the stand. She was very close to the family. The attorneys questioned her about that, and she broke down and started crying on the stand. She is clearly conflicted by this, but she's having to testify against her former boss and friend, and she has to tell the truth, and the truth is not looking so good for her former boss and friend.
There it is. Yeah, I was trying to understand how to perceive that moment. And just the magnitude of it all, the intensity at the beginning, her saying she was nervous, could have just been what contributed to that without a big takeaway. But I think if there is a big takeaway, it's that she still feels loyalty to Trump, someone that she did become very close with and worked very loyally for. And whatever she felt like was being revealed in that moment, at least from her perception, was bad enough where maybe it triggered that reaction. We can't know for sure, but I do agree that there were some positive moments for Trump in her testimony where it can be argued, see, he was also concerned about his family. But to your point, Don, this broader scheme, they're getting it pretty clearly defined as a campaign effort with how intimately Trump was involved and stressed about the political implications of it.
Mark, didn't you tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you thought Hope Hicks was going to be the last or the star witness and would not be brought on so soon? And that Michael Cohen would be brought in earlier and then they would close with someone stronger or who didn't have credibility issues? No?
I don't believe I said that. No? I do predict,
Are you surprised
however,
that she was called at this time?
Yeah, no, because she's not, she's not a huge, again, she's a helpful witness, candidly, to both sides, but the major issue is Trump saying, or not, that this was all to interfere with an election. I mean, that you got to go back to what this case is about. And I'm telling you right now, people aren't talking about this. It occurred to me this morning. This case is going to come down to what the jury instructions are. There's standard instructions for burglary, murder, rape. There's no standard instructions for a case like this. It's never been brought. So what is the language? Does it have to be Trump's primary focus was to interfere with an election? If that's the case, there's reasonable doubt all over this case. Is it one of the motivating factors was to influence an election? Ooh, that's better for prosecutors. It's going to come down to what's in the jury instructions.
I want to talk, I have one last question for both of you, and I'll start with you, Luke, because Bloomberg is reporting that Trump has narrowed his VP search to the final four here. Senator Marco Rubio, South Carolina Governor Tim Scott, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. So I can't speak to the accuracy of this reporting, especially since we've had the whole Kristi Noem incident, and then you had yesterday on Meet the Press. Tim Scott couldn't answer. I don't know if you saw that, whether he would support, with the outcome of whatever the election is. But who do you think is most likely to be the pick here, Luke? What's your response?
Ooh, so interestingly, before this last couple of weeks, I would have said South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And then she seemed to tank that with the dog killing story. And also she got exposed after that for potentially lying in that same book about meeting certain world leaders and staring them down and, sending fear through their spine. But I'm honestly not sure among those. That's why I was saying before, Kristi Noem, it's going to be Kristi Noem. He had previously expressed interest in picking a female running mate, and with his troubles with certain blocks of women voters, that could be beneficial. Of the four you just listed, maybe Tim Scott or JD Vance, but one of the biggest takeaways from this search, to me, Don, it gets to the remark you're talking about with Tim Scott, is that one of the qualifiers to be a candidate for Trump's VP pick is saying that you would have overturned the last election, as Mike Pence didn't. And thinking about how frightening of a time we're in, where one of the presidential picks wants a commitment from their VP running mate that if they're put in the position to violate our Constitution, democracy, and bring in a slate of fraudulent electors, that's what they would do instead of picking the country above the party.
Yeah, I'm torn between Marco Rubio and Tim Scott. But
you think Marco Rubio? Interesting.
Yeah, because Marco Rubio appeals to the establishment wing of the party. And so what's left of the establishment in the party? And I'm sure those folks would like to take the party back. And so they may vote for Marco Rubio because in the next time they would think Marco Rubio would have a chance, to win after Trump, maybe a better chance than Tim Scott. So I don't know, Mark, if you care to weigh in on this. You're an attorney. I don't know if you want to be a political pundit.
It's not a legal question. Luke seems very smart and passionate. I will defer to him.
Well done. And well done, both of you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Luke. I'll see you next time.
Take care, Don. Be well.